Hey guys, thanks for joining me again today. I know there's a ton of advice and mistake videos out on YouTube. Most of those are centered around gear and settings. I like to approach things a little bit differently on my channel, so I'd like to share with you 5 mistakes that I've made and I think you can avoid that will help you advance your journey in photography. If you've watched any of my other videos, first of all, I want to take a moment to thank you for engaging with me on YouTube. But secondly, you'll know that my channel is heavily focused on using photography as a mindfulness practice. One of the things that I fell into the trap of doing when I first picked up a camera again after quite a long break was turning it into a project of collecting. I would go out and I would shoot everything. And while that is a really important thing to do to get used to using the camera, you can begin to fall into the trap of turning your photography into an exercise of trying to check things off the list. And as I've talked about before, I think that the pervasiveness of productivity and grind culture in our society today are a huge reason why so many photographers burn out or lose their interest in the medium or struggle with creative block. So I suggest that when you first pick up a camera, although it's really important to shoot as much as possible, try to be selective and don't go out with the mindset that you have to always get a successful picture or something that's worth posting on in social media. Sometimes just the practice of taking a bad photo can be the most important thing you can do to help advance your photography. I think one of the easiest traps we fall into as photographers is assuming that the place we live, work, and spend most of our lives is not worth pointing a camera at because it's become so familiar. I've been extremely lucky to travel to some incredible parts of the world, and taking pictures there really does make those trips come alive for me. Every time I step outside of this country or visit a new place, I'm trying to tell a story about the journey that I had and the experience that I had while I was there. But the problem with doing that all the time and thinking that it's the only way you can make interesting images means that you forget about what's close to you. And there can be some really interesting photographic experiences and stories that you can tell by just sticking local. And when you do this, it enables you to shoot more regularly. It also enables you to try and see the place that you think you know so well in a completely different light. So I'd urge you not to fall into the trap of assuming the only way to get interesting photographs is to travel outside of where you're currently at, and spend some time photographing the familiar more often. You might actually find something that surprises you. I think one of the biggest pitfalls that we are faced with today as creatives is the over-reliance on the feedback that we get from social media. Now, don't get me wrong. I use Instagram, Substack, and I'm fully aware that I'm talking to you right now through YouTube, which is another social media channel. I think it's really important to realize, though, that if we start creating work based on the likes and feedback we get from social media, that we're forgetting why we started to do this in the first place. We should be creating work that we want to, and shouldn't be basing it on what gets likes or hits on various social media channels. Now, I think social media has a valid role to play for photographers. It's a great way to engage with other people in our community. It's a great way to view the work of others. But we shouldn't place too much credence on the feedback we get there, and we should make more of an effort to engage in person with people and talk about photography there. And I'd urge everybody that when you think about posting an image, maybe you should think about printing it first. Would you print that image? And if you would, maybe it's worth posting. But if not, maybe it's a good idea to sometimes step back and think a little bit more about what we put up there and why we're doing it. I think that last stumbling block leads nicely into the next. All too often, we completely lose sight of why we even started the pursuit of photography in the first place. We become overly focused on the outcomes, and we forget why we even got here to begin with. Now, everybody's journey is different, and the reason for you doing this is going to be completely different from the next person's also. For me, photography is a deeply personal thing. I returned to it after quite a long hiatus, and it was during a time in my life when I was struggling deeply with my mental health. I'd become incredibly cynical about the world and humans in general, and I didn't think there was much good going on anywhere. Ultimately, what I did was picked up a camera, forced myself to go out onto the streets of New York and take pictures of complete strangers. What I learned while doing this was that there is way more good in the world than there is bad, and that ultimately I can control how I think about my day. It's an incredibly important thing that I have to hold dear to me and close to my chest every time I go outside, because I can quickly become distracted and start thinking I've got to produce a certain type of work based on how it's perceived on social media or the engagement I've gotten from other people who've looked at my work. If I lose sight of that, the work I produce isn't going to be genuine and it isn't going to be me. So I think one of the most important things you can do is constantly remind yourself why you picked up the camera to begin with. Now, before we get on to the last tip, I'd first of all like to thank everybody who's watched the video to this point. I really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please give it a like and subscribe and engage with me in the comments section. I really appreciate that kind of engagement, and I try to respond to all the comments that are posted on all of my videos. So I think this final one is probably something that most people who are watching this video have done before, told themselves they're not going to do it again, and then they've done it the next time. And that's leave the house without a camera because the place you're going is too boring or doesn't have anything to shoot. And I know that you may not be enthralled by taking a camera to the grocery store or the laundromat because you've shot there a bunch of times before. But I urge you to think differently. When we use our camera every single day, it creates muscle memory. We become more in tune with the technical aspect of photography, which frees our mind up to be more attentive and in tune with the things that are happening around us. And when we do that, magic can actually really happen. I think we become more observant and we become more aware of the things that are occurring in our lives. And after all, I think that's one of the reasons we pick up a camera in the first place. So don't make excuses for yourself. Create some kind of system of accountability around making sure that every time you step out of that front door, you take a photo-taking device with you. It doesn't have to be a camera, it can be a cell phone, but be prepared to take images. Again, guys, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope you've gotten something out of this. If you have, please don't forget to like the video and comment and also subscribe. It helps the channel greatly. I appreciate everybody who stuck around to the end, and thank you very much for your engagement here on YouTube. I'll see you all again soon.